Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan El Rome.
In our top story, Shifa Hospital is in our hands. The former Hamas stronghold has been liberated by Israeli troops who have uncovered concrete evidence that the facility was used as a Hamas terror command center. After evacuating the hospital, along with 30 premature babies, the IDF searched the building and found a large cache of weapons, military communications coding equipment, bombs, and an intricate network of terror tunnels underneath the hospital. They also found solid intelligence that at least 3 of the hostages taken captive by the terror group on October 7th were held there, and that Corporal Noro Marciano was executed inside of the hospital. IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said that the world must remember Hamas is holding men, women, children, and babies as hostages. The Israel Defense Forces have a moral obligation to bring them home, and we will not rest until we do.
The administration of U.S. President Joe Biden has extended a sanctions waiver that will allow Iran, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, to access $10 billion. Critics say the sanctions relief will enable the radical Shiite republic to continue its bloody terror campaign through Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist groups that target Americans, Israelis, and Jews around the world. The influx of cash will also assist the fanatic Iranian regime in moving forward with its rogue nuclear program. This comes as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced it has developed a hypersonic missile that it claims can bypass the most advanced anti-ballistic systems, including those used by the United States and Israel. Biden's attempt to appease the Ayatollah's theocratic regime has failed as Tehran continues to direct its proxy armies to attack Western interests in the Middle East while it threatens to destroy the Jewish state.
The Palestinian Authority continues to lie to the Arab people in an attempt to radicalize them to commit acts of violence against Jews. Last week, the PA released a statement claiming that Israel fabricated the October 7th massacre as a pretext for the war in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called out PA leader Mahmoud Abbas, saying in the past, Abbas has denied the Holocaust. Today, he's denying the Hamas massacre. He said, my goal is that the day after we destroy Hamas, any future civil administration in Gaza does not deny the massacre, does not educate its children to become terrorists, does not pay for terrorism, and does not tell its children that their ultimate goal in life is to seek the destruction and dissolution of the State of Israel.
Iranian-backed Houthi rebels have hijacked an Israeli-owned cargo vessel in the Red Sea. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that the ship, named the Galaxy Leader, and its international crew of 52 souls, was hijacked on an Iranian whim by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Netanyahu called it another act of Iranian terrorism and a leap forward in aggression against citizens of the free world. The Israeli premier added that this piracy on the high seas creates an international implication when it comes to the security of global shipping routes. The IDF announced that the vessel had been leased to a Japanese company at the time of the hijacking and that no Israelis were on board.
Newly elected president of Argentina, Javier Milei, has promised to move his country's embassy to Jerusalem. Milei is a staunch supporter of the Jewish state. He harshly condemned the Hamas attacks on Israel and expressed his solidarity with Jerusalem. He also issued a proposal for Hamas to be designated a terror organization by the Argentine government. Following the announcement of his victory, Milei said he plans to visit the Jewish state before his inauguration.
An overwhelming majority of Palestinians support the Hamas terror group. A recent poll conducted by the Arab World for Research and Development reveals that more than 48% of Palestinian adults view Hamas's role in the attacks on Israel as very positive. 59% said they support the massacre of more than 1,200 people by Hamas on October 7th. And nearly 98% admitted the genocide made them feel prouder of their identity as Palestinians.
Israel's internal security service, Shin Bet, has announced that it targeted a Palestinian terror cell planning imminent attacks in Judea and Samaria. The IDF and Shin Bet faced off against this group, killing several terrorists involved in the plot to murder Jews in the biblical heartland. Israeli media reported that 5 of those killed were members of Fatah's Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. After the raid, the IDF uncovered an explosives laboratory and identified numerous IEDs planted underground targeting Israeli troops. The IDF has arrested 1,800 wanted Palestinians since the outbreak of the war. 1,050 of them are affiliated with Hamas.
A pro-Palestinian group has published a map of the location of Jewish organizations in New York City and encouraged its followers to attack them. The organization goes by the name Within Our Lifetime, also called for the destruction of Israel and to globalize the Intifada. The Anti-Defamation League released a statement saying, "We strongly condemn maps of New York City with calls to globalize the Intifada in direct actions and operation zones." The New York City Council's Jewish Caucus denounced the post as dangerous and abhorrent incitement to violence and stressed that it poses a direct threat to New York's Jewish communities that must be taken seriously.
A university professor has been charged with the death of a Jewish man during pro-Palestinian protests held in Los Angeles. Eric Nasarenko, the district attorney for Ventura County, announced that charges for involuntary manslaughter and battery were filed against Loy Abdul Fattah al-Naji in the death of 69-year-old Paul Kessler. These charges have special allegations that al-Naji personally inflicted great bodily injury on Kessler during the demonstrations, which led to his death. Paul Kessler was part of a group waving Israeli flags during the anti-Israel protest in LA. He was struck in the head during an altercation at the rally and later died from his wounds.
Palestinian officials in Bethlehem have ordered the dismantlement of all Christmas decorations in honor of the Hamas terror group and their so-called fallen martyrs. Bethlehem has become a stronghold for Islamic extremism since the Palestinian Authority took control of the ancient biblical city more than 25 years ago. The once thriving Christian community is under the control of Islamists who are hostile to Bible believers who now make up less than 10% of the population. Christians complain of discrimination, the desecration of holy sites, and ruthless persecution. The announcement to ban Christmas festivities in the birthplace of Jesus is just the latest in a series of moves that Muslim authorities are enforcing in an attempt to erase the Christian connection to Bethlehem.
An Arab journalist employed by NBC has been arrested in Jerusalem on suspicion of inciting terrorism. 45-year-old Marwat al-Azza made numerous posts to Facebook glorifying the Hamas slaughter of 1,200 people on October 7th. Her posts also reportedly incite further violence and express support for terror. A representative with the Jerusalem Magistrates Court said these are very serious offenses during a time of declared war, when the respondent lives and makes a living in the same country that is under attack and yet chooses to incite and glorify the murderous attacks against civilians.
The majority of Americans blame the Hamas terror group for the war in Gaza and continue to express support for the Jewish state. A recent Fox News poll found that 66% of voters side with Israel in the conflict. That figure represents a majority of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. Nearly half of those polled believe that America's support for Israel is about where it should be, while 21% say it's not supportive enough. Chris Anderson conducted the survey for Fox News. He explained that Americans overwhelmingly blame Hamas for the situation in Gaza, and as a result, most support military aid to Israel.
The Congressional Israel Allies Caucus has introduced a bipartisan resolution calling on Congress to declare a weekend of prayer and reflection for Israel. The resolution emphasizes that the United States and the Jewish state of Israel are inextricably tied together by their shared Abrahamic faiths, and it called on the people of the United States to participate in a weekend of prayer for all civilians caught in the crossfire of the war and the safe return of all of the hostages. Jordana McMillan, the U.S. director of the Israel Allies Foundation, said this resolution is a reflection of the meaningful and critical work of the CIAC, the first bipartisan pro-Israel caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives. She went on to say that the United States has a history of calling for prayer in critical times, and the caucus continues in that faith-based tradition. She quoted the prophet Isaiah saying, "For Zion's sake, I will not be silent." And she called on all Christians and Jews to lift their voices in prayer together.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned now for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Pastor Larry Huch, the head of Larry Huch Ministries. Pastor Huch, thank you for being on the show.
Josh, good to be with you.
Well, we're in the middle of a war right now. There's attacks on the north. We're in the ground invasion in the south in Gaza. But you're here in Israel. Can you tell us a little about that?
Since October 7th, I've felt a real strong urge to come. And to be honest, Josh, I didn't really know. I didn't want to be in the way. You know, why am I feeling I need to come? And when I got here, I realized just being here and people from soldiers to politicians to civilians, just being here and showing that we care and showing that we have solidarity with Israel has meant so much to people. We're here to raise funds. We're here to film and to show what's really happened so that nobody can say this didn't really happen. You know, this is fake news. We've been there. We've seen it. I've talked to victims, families. I've talked to hostage families. And so we're here to raise funds to support Israel, to support the effort. We work with you. We work with Karen Hazot. But even more than that, just people knowing, because I think they see so much negative news. To hear, you know what, we're with you. Yeah. We're with Israel. We're with our Jewish brothers and sisters has meant a lot.
You know, your name is synonymous with Christian support for Israel. Everyone in a leadership position knows Pastor Larry Huch. Larry Huch Ministries has given millions of dollars to Israel throughout the years. Why should Christians continue to stand and support Israel?
The simple statement is Genesis 12:3, but I will bless those who bless Israel. But this is our land too. We're connected by our hearts and by our spirit and by our love for God and His Word. And the Jewish people are our brothers and sisters, and to stand with them, God says, I will bless those who bless Israel. And we've seen that. We've seen miracles in my grandson and miracles in Tiz, literally gave them their lives back. But it's deeper than just being blessed. It's something that moves your heart and moves your spirit when you stand with the land of Israel and you stand with the Jewish people. It's almost undescribable, but it's our mission. It's my mission, I believe, from God, to get the church, get the Christians to understand how much love we have for Israel.
You come to Israel multiple times, usually with groups, doing Bible studies, but this trip was a lot different. You actually went down to Kibbutz Be'eri, to Kfar Aza to see the genocide. What was that like for you?
It was worse than I thought. I've seen it on the news. We've seen videos, but to be there, I was standing in one bomb shelter that was riveted with bullets. And there's a My Little Pony, a little girl's diary, and there's blood on the ground. They bombed everything. They burned everything, and to be there, and you could feel it, and it was overwhelming, but it was so worth going there so that I can go back and say to the world, don't believe that this didn't happen. I saw where it happened.
Well, you see on your T-shirt two of the little girls who were kidnapped, over 240 hostages being held by Hamas. Yet on the streets of the United States, there are people ripping down the posters of people just like that, in a terrible anti-Semitic surge. Why is it important for you to wear that shirt and to speak up?
This little girl is not a prisoner of, these little girls are not prisoners of war. They're kidnapped victims. And I don't want the word hostage just to become a word. I want them to see Aviv and Raz. I met their family. And the story, Josh, that they told me is heartbreaking. And they're still there. These are not hostages. These are little girls, and there's so many of them. And we want to keep this out because the further we get away from October 7th, my fear is we'll forget. And we want to make sure that nobody forgets that these hostages have got to be released. And Israel has not only the right, but the obligation to eliminate these butchers for what they did.
You know, we believe in the power of prayer. Millions of Christians are praying for Israel every day for the peace of Jerusalem. But what can Christians do other than pray? How do they can get involved in other ways?
Send finances. It goes to everything from big items like ambulances and bomb shelters to food and medicine and moving tens and tens of thousands of people that have no homes anymore and feeding and clothing. It's just unlimited. And so prayer is obviously huge, but help us do something to help Israel. You know, we've been helping Israel. We've been standing with Israel for 30 years, but Israel's never needed outside help more than they need it right now, and have never appreciated it more than they need it right now. So help us help Israel, because we really can make a difference.
Pastor Larry, there are literally tens of millions of people watching the show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
We've got to stand up. We've got to speak up. We've got to make it loud and clear that we are standing with the nation of Israel, because it's not just about a land. It's about evil versus good. It's evil versus civilization. So this is our Esther moment. Let's stand up and let's be heard loud and clear. Israel has a right to defeat this enemy once and for all.
Thank you, Pastor Larry, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the truth from Zion.
Throughout history, few cities have held the significance and sanctity that Jerusalem possesses. For over 3 millennia, it has stood as the heart and soul of the Jewish people, a testament to their unbreakable bond with this sacred land. According to the Bible, it was King David who established Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people. It was a testament to his vision and devotion to a united Israel. Since then, Jerusalem has served as the focal point of Jewish faith and, in many ways, Jewish identity. Around the year 589 before the Common Era, the Babylonian Empire surrounded Jerusalem. They captured the city and destroyed the first Holy Temple. Many Jews were exiled to Babylon, which is now called Iraq. But even during the exile, the Jewish people maintained their spiritual connection to the city. The Jews may have been driven from their beloved city, but Jerusalem always remained in their hearts and minds. The exile ended 70 years later, and the Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem to build the Second Temple. However, it too was destroyed, this time by the Romans in the year 70 of the Common Era. After that, Jews began praying facing toward Jerusalem, and they still do so today. Jews have longed to return to the city for thousands of years, and that nostalgic sentiment became a symbol of Jewish life in the diaspora. Rebuilding the city, erecting a holy temple, and returning the exiles to Jerusalem is a pattern that is woven into daily Jewish prayer, poetry, art, and even sacred ceremonies. When a Jewish man and woman get married, there's an important part of the ceremony, a poignant reminder of Jerusalem, which is spoken aloud. "If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill." These words reflect the deep-seated belief that Jerusalem is an inseparable part of the Jewish soul. When a Jewish man breaks a glass with his foot while under the wedding canopy, it's a reminder of the destruction of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. By the 1880s, Jews began to escape pogroms throughout Europe and the Middle East. They started journeying to their biblical homeland, seeking a safe place to live and vowing to reclaim their rightful capital. By the end of World War II, thousands of Jewish Holocaust survivors began making their way to the Holy Land. In 1948, the State of Israel was established, and by 1950, Israel's parliament declared Jerusalem as the capital. Israel has been a sovereign nation for 3/4 of a century, Every country gets the right to choose its capital. Nevertheless, many nations around the world chose the city of Tel Aviv as the site to open their embassies in order to appease anti-Israel sentiment in the Arab world.
Under international law, Israel has full legal right to Jerusalem. Jerusalem has always been Israel's capital, but in the 1948 War of Independence, Jordan invaded and divided the city in half, occupying the eastern part. Now, as we all know, invading a country, taking over its territory, cannot change borders. So when Israel took Jerusalem back, reconquered the old city in 1967, it became fully Israeli, and Israel has complete legal right to it. Countries that don't recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital show that they're not just objecting to Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria, they're objecting to Israel in any borders whatsoever.
With such a rich and clear history, the undeniable truth remains: Jerusalem is the undivided capital of Israel. The United States supported Israel's capital claim with the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act, which was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress. It called for the relocation of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But for more than 2 decades, concerns over security prevented it from becoming a reality. This all changed under the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump. He took a historic step by officially recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. On May 14, 2018, the United States once and for all transferred the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Other nations followed Washington's example. Guatemala was the first on May 16, 2018. Then the Muslim-majority country of Kosovo moved their embassy in March of 2021, followed by Honduras in June of 2021. Most recently, Papua New Guinea transferred their embassy in September of 2023. 7 additional countries have vowed to move their embassies as well. Jerusalem is now and will forever be a beacon of hope and unity for the Jewish people. And now, shining light from Israel.
On the west coast of Israel, between Tel Aviv and Haifa, lays the ancient port city of Caesarea. Water, water, water. But it's not the kind that you can drink. And that was an issue for the ancient people that lived here in Caesarea, or Caesarea, depending on who you ask. Today, the modern state of Israel boasts this beautiful beach where people come day in and day out to enjoy the blue waters and the ancient ruins of the Roman Empire. Welcome to the ancient aqueducts of Caesarea. Here there are 3 aqueducts. The original that was created by King Herod, a second set created by Emperor Hadrian, who came from Rome to see the eastern Judean part of his empire. Now, a third set of aqueducts, a low-level aqueducts, are here with us as well. Those were created later by the Byzantine Empire. These 3 aqueducts are still here today in great condition, and 2 of them over here still functioned for 1,200 years, bringing fresh water to the people, and in fact, 5 legions were responsible for creating them. You can see their etchings where they wanted people to know they wrote their names, and there's a big tile in the Israel Museum detailing 6 lines of people that were involved in this creation. It's very cool, and you can come over here and see if you can find some etchings yourself. This is Caesarea National Park, where there are pristine ruins all around us, but just about 6% are what excavators believe has already been brought to the surface, and some of those ruins are actually under the water. So this is a place where it's believed that Peter heard the voice of God telling him to welcome Gentiles and to journey with them to Caesarea. At the time, it was hostile here between Judeans and Gentiles, and this was considered to be somewhat of a turning point. So many of these excavations are so beautiful, and we're going to see even more of them. Come with us. Here in the park, there are a number of excavations, including the Hippodrome, where there were gladiator fights, circus performances, and an amphitheater, which is still used for performances until today. And a number of new excavations have been unveiled, including vaults and a mosaic floor and a Byzantine synagogue. In ancient Roman times, there were two impressive ports, one of them in what is today Gaza in the south, and the other right here in Caesarea. Now, just 2 years ago, shipwrecks were found underneath these waters, and on board were items that must have belonged to the people, including gems, rings, and even a batch of 1,700-year-old coins that were made of gold. Now, one of the major exports that were taken out of this place was grape product. The other export were Judean slaves that were brought in shackles via ship from here to Rome. Amongst the last sights that they saw were the aqueducts we visited on shore. After getting lost amongst the ruins, you can find yourself having a fine dining experience here in Caesarea with gelato and plates of spaghetti, you name it. This is a wonderful place. There's no shortage of activities to do here in Caesarea, whether you're shopping in the artisan craft markets, or you're eating in fine dining restaurants, or if you're learning how to snorkel or scuba dive under the water to see the ancient ruins. In addition to all of that, you can learn how to blow glass, just like the ancient craftsmakers who come from this very region. On your next trip to Israel, make sure to come over to the ancient port city of Caesarea.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elron, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.